the exhalations. So hum means I am that capital T that. I am it all. I am one with the universe. I am one with the Creator. I am one with the creation. So hum. Take the breaths at your own pace, but just allow this mantra to chant in your consciousness as you inhale and exhale. Feel the mantra like a magnet inside of you, a very powerful magnet that is drawing all of your attention from the world around you to the world inside you. As you chant that mantra, it's pulling your power of attention deep within yourself. If the mind wanders, if you get distracted, just bring the awareness back to the breath and back to the sacred mantra. Gently and slowly bring the palms of your hands together at chest level and rub them gently against each other. press the palms of your hands into your closed eyes. Slowly open your eyes and lower the hands. Welcome to Satsang. So sorry for the last minute absence of the last 2 days. I had not been planning to go anywhere, and then at the last minute had to go to Vrindavan for a beautiful program that was there, and then a meeting in the with the cultural minister and the heads of several different very large religious institutions last night in Delhi. So apologies for the absence without warning. Usually I try to let people know if I'm not going to be here, but this was sudden and spontaneous. So apologies for that, but it's so beautiful to be back. And by God's grace, I'm not going to be traveling anywhere for at least the next week. So we'll start, as always, with a question that comes in advance, and then any question that anyone here has, I'll be happy to take it. Why is silence so powerful? So many reasons. First of all, it's really important to realize that silence is not the absence of noise, any more than peace is the absence of violence, or health is the absence of illness. Yes, in order for there to be silence, you need an absence of noise. In order for there to be peace, there needs to not be conflict. In order to have health, you need to not have illness. But it's a lot bigger than that. It's a lot more than that in all of the circumstances. Silence, it's not an emptiness. If you think of it just as the absence of noise, then it would be simply an emptiness, an absence. There was a presence of noise. Now there's no longer a presence of noise. We have an absence. It is silence. It's not that. Silence is very full. It's actually, interestingly, a lot more full than noise, because it enables us to experience a fullness that is much deeper, much richer, and much more full than that which takes place simply through the sound waves in the atmosphere. You know, we hear conversation, we hear sounds, we hear noise, we hear music, we hear whatever it may be. And it makes us feel like it's full. There's a lot of stuff going on. The auditory nerves of my brain are being constantly stimulated. But when you stop stimulating them, and you actually create a spaciousness of silence, then you actually start to really hear the sounds of the self, the sounds of the universe. And it's so much more powerful than the sounds that we hear in the world around us. So remember, it's very full. If we remember that the reason we are here, the whole purpose of our human existence, is to have what we call self-realization or God-realization, to know the self, how can we know it if we're constantly distracted? You can't know anything if you're constantly distracted. If you're sitting in a classroom, just even picture you're learning anything. Sitting in a class, a teacher's doing arithmetic on the board or teaching history. And every 2 seconds, we are distracted by a phone, by the person sitting next to us, by whatever it may be. You're not going to learn what's being taught. You're going to fail the exam. Very simple. It's why we tell all of our children, pay attention in class. Listen to what the teacher says. Why? Because if you're not listening, you're not going to get what's being taught. You're going to fail the exam. Same thing in life. There's not an exam. The universe is very patient. It'll just keep giving you birth after birth until you finally learn it. But it's the same idea that if you're not listening, you're not going to learn. You're not going to hear the truth if you're not listening. And if we are listening only externally, oh, what did you say? Oh, change the channel on my radio. You're not going to hear the sound inside. Silence also does something that's really interesting. If you watch your thoughts, what you'll notice is that a lot of the thoughts we have are actually preparing and rehearsing for what we're going to tell somebody else. So I've noticed, for example, if I'm taking a walk, let's say, and I'm walking alone, and I notice something, immediately my mind will start preparing the way I'm going to tell somebody what I saw. It's rehearsing the conversation I'm going to have when I get back from my walk, or pull my phone out of my bag to call somebody and tell somebody something. But if you're in silence and your mind knows, even when I get back from my walk, I'm not going to be telling anybody this thing I saw because I'm in silence, the mind stops doing its preparation rehearsal thing. And you realize in times like that how much of the mind's energy is spent planning conversations that we're going to have. What we're going to say, what somebody else is going to say, what's the best way to say it, what's kind of a funny way to say it. We're constantly, somebody sends us a message, we're constantly planning what we're going to say in response. But if you're in silence and your mind knows you're not going to be saying anything, whether it's for hours or days, the mind stops planning because there's a sort of critical window, you could say, of time. You're not going to say to somebody, 4 days ago, remember you said this? Well, here's a very funny line in response. It's not funny 4 days later. It's only funny in the moment. You're not going to say to somebody, 4 days ago I took a walk and I saw this thing. They'd be like, right, so? It's only interesting in the spur of the moment. So almost 100%, not exactly, but almost 100% of the things that you're planning to say are never going to get said if you're in silence at that time, which means the mind stops preparing itself. So not only is the mind quiet because you're not actually having conversation and listening to other people, but you're not even having the internal conversation. And so it really becomes very quiet. Another really powerful aspect of silence is it reminds us what a huge percentage, way over 50%, I would say close to 100%, but again, not fully 100%, certainly 90%, of that which we speak is utterly useless. It's just filling up space. And if you're in silence, the mind still, at least for the first few days, depending on how long you observe, but at least for the first few days, the mind will keep having an instinct of something to say because it forgets you're in silence. And you have to keep reminding it, oh, wait, I'm in silence. After a few days, it starts to remember and it stops even coming up with these thoughts. But as thoughts arise and the mind says, oh, I'm in silence, you realize, thank God, that was kind of a stupid thing I was planning to say anyway. And you just start to see the rising of what you ordinarily would speak without thinking. And it makes you realize, my God, how much energy am I wasting in literally just verbalizing the nonsense commentary in my own mind. I mean, it's bad enough that it's reverberating in my own mind. Now I need to fill the sound waves of the universe with it. Like, it's bad enough I'm sick inside. We tell everybody, when you're sick, stay home. Don't go to work. Don't go to school. Don't go to the grocery store. Don't get other people sick. Don't sneeze and cough on others. But we all have this sickness of the mind where it's just engaged in constant, unnecessary nonsense. And then what do? We verbalize it. We bring that inner sickness to fill up the space in the world around us, polluting other people's minds as well. I've actually started to see that kind of talk as what you could call soft violence. You're not taking a knife or a gun and killing someone. But on a very deep level, it's actually still violence because you are filling the sound waves around them. You're filling the energy around them with that which is not only not helpful, but is actually harmful. So silence reminds us, oh, I don't actually have to say everything I think. I'm not just stimulus response salivating Pavlov's dogs. I actually have the ability to decide what to speak. And so not only is silence powerful, but your speech becomes much more powerful if you are an observer of silence. Because you don't just say something because you thought it. And you don't just speak to fill up space, which means you save a lot of energy. Speaking, it actually takes a lot of energetic Shakti of the body. Dehydrates you. As you speak, you're literally, sending little water particles out in the world. When you do a lot of speaking, you get thirsty. You sing, you speak, you get thirsty because you're literally sending out water. So it saves energy, physical energy, just energetic energy of the body. So it's a great practice. I really, really strongly recommend it. And if you can't string days together based on your logistic situation, don't worry. Just have a few hours a day that you're in silence. Not while you're sleeping. Some hours when you are awake. Start even with just 1 hour a day. and then expand it and expand it. A lot of us think, oh my God, I couldn't possibly do it. As though what we say is so important. And the minute you start, you realize, oh, I guess what I say isn't that important. I guess I'm actually able to get by in silence a lot more easily than I thought I was. And then you start to hear the sound of the self. So it's a very, very powerful practice. Other questions? Any question that anyone here has? Yes. He's bringing you a microphone, then you will be.
Hello. Yeah. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe
My name is Sahar Jain and I am from Indore, MP. My question is, how important is evilness in the society? Because if there is evil, then only there is a good. Then only you can bifurcate what is good and what is bad. So my question is how important it is.
How important is evil in society? Because only if there's evil, then is there good. I don't think so. On a level of discrimination, yes, we are able to discriminate based on contrasts. I know what light is because I know what darkness is. I know what heat is because I know what coldness is. But I don't think that the ability to discriminate is the highest virtue and something that we need to ensure is always available to us. If someone said to me, I'll give you a magic wand that would enable you, or a magic mantra that would enable you to obliterate evil from society, I would do it in a second, and I would be totally unconcerned about the fact that we now wouldn't have anything to compare goodness to. I'd much rather that we don't have something to compare goodness to, and that we just live in that which is, whether we call it goodness or we just call it isness. I'd much rather that situation than have lots of evil so that we have something to compare it to. So I don't think evil is necessary in society at all. When you look at our yugas and the cycle of yugas, the cycle of eras, and we move through eras of goodness and truth and darkness, yes, there's even in the Mahabharata, even in the Ramayana, even in eras of goodness and truth and light, there's nonetheless powers of evil. And yet those powers are then able to be vanquished and conquered by goodness. And at least for some time, things are good, restored. Dharma is restored, light is restored, goodness is restored. As though there were sort of a blip of darkness, of adharma, of evil, and it gets conquered by light, by goodness, by dharma. And I don't see a need then for there to be another blip until, of course, we turn cycles, turn eras, and things shift. At the moment we are in Kali Yuga. It's an era of darkness. So there's going to be darkness. But we're going to find ourselves, assuming that we are conscious and aware and awake long enough, back in eras of light and truth and goodness. At which time, hopefully, by God's grace, there will no longer be that evil. But even in Kali Yuga, our dharma is to do whatever we can to bring goodness to conquer evil. One of my favorite teachings from our scriptures is, if you take these two teachings together, you take the line in the Bhagavad Gita in which Bhagwan Krishna says, wherever darkness is winning out over light, wherever adharma is growing more powerful than dharma, I incarnate, I, God, incarnate in form to bring back light to the darkness, to bring back dharma to the adharma. And then in our scriptures, we are told in many, many different scriptures, in many different ways, that the divine lives within every single one of us. That every one of us is pervaded by the divine. Now, if you take those two teachings together, what they mean to me is, we, every one of us, is that physical incarnation of God in form, here very purposely to bring light back to the darkness, to bring dharma back to adharma, to bring goodness back to evil. That is our dharma. That is why we are here in form, if you look at these two teachings together. So I'm really convinced that if we all actually fulfill our dharma, realize that we are one with the divine, God realization, self-realization, moksha, whatever we call it, enlightenment, and then engage in exactly the action that God has done previously in incarnations here on earth, action, to rid the world of the evil. So I don't think it's necessary at all. I think it's going to exist until and unless we all really give birth to that power of the divine within each of us, until we stop waiting for someone else to do it, until we stop feeling not good enough, not powerful enough, not pure enough, not divine enough. And we really listen to what God is telling us in our scriptures, which is, I am in you, in every one of you. And when we finally realize that, goodness will prevail. And I think society will do just fine, even without something to compare it to. Beautiful. Other questions? Yes.
I would like to ask you, sometimes when there are, early 20s, there are young adults who are not yet married, they've completed their education, and they're not able to find the right path. So the values which the parents give, they absorb them, but there are so many distractions in today's world. So what is the best advice you can give them? Because as parents, we give advice, but
Yeah.
it's not listened
They don't
to.
always take it, right?
Yeah.
First of all, it's important to realize that path in life and career are not actually synonyms of each other. For some people, they may be. For some people, there may be a sense, my dharma is to heal. I'm going to become a doctor. And that's just what I want to do, and it's who I am, and every minute of my life I will be fulfilling this dharma. For some, they may feel like my dharma is to teach, to be with children, and they will go and get a degree in teaching, and they will start teaching children in school, and that will be their life's work. And for some people, the two things overlap. But for the vast, overwhelming majority of people, they don't. And that's okay. But it's important for us as parents, as grandparents, as mentors, as aunts, as uncles, as friends, to not confuse them into thinking that in selecting a career, they are simultaneously having to choose a path of life. Because choosing a path of life is huge. I mean, at 20, 21, 22, who in the world knows what path of life they want to take? And it's difficult for the older generations because with each generation, our possible choices increase. If I think about my grandmother, for example, I don't think she ever went through a sort of identity crisis of what do I want to do, what is my purpose, what is my passion. You don't hear about people my grandmother's age having those sorts of dilemmas. You just did what everybody did. You got married. And in general, the men went out and they had some kind of a job doing whatever they happened to be skilled in doing. And they put food on the table, and the women had kids and they kept the home. And I'm not saying that that was some kind of an ideal, but it just was what was standard at that time. Even my mother's generation, as women started working, there still was a sense of, you're going to get a degree and you'll get a job, but it didn't carry that weight of, it must be my purpose, it must be my passion, it must be my everything. It was just, what seems interesting to me? What's a good way to make a living? What do I have skills in? It was much more simple. This particular generation is a generation in which not only are they creating jobs. I mean, even when I was in my 20s, there still was a sense of what do you want to be, and here were all of your options. Now, it's not a matter of choose your box. Now everyone is sort of inventing their own career. I mean, the tech revolution, between actual computers and programming and coding and technology to social media and influencing and all of that, has literally created a situation where kids are asking themselves, what career am I going to invent for myself, rather than what box am I going to walk into? And that's a much bigger, much more confusing situation than has ever existed in history. So I think it's really important for us to recognize that and to have compassion for that, but also to help them understand, you know, your passion, your purpose, your dharma may not necessarily be the way you bring home the money to put on the table. You may end up having a passion and a dharma that's something completely different from actually what you get up every day and do at work to feed your family and send your kids to school and have a roof over your head, and that's okay. They're now in this illusion that somehow when I find my purpose, it's going to not only fill me and fulfill me totally and completely, but it's also going to pay the bills and give me a lot of income. And those two things don't necessarily go together. And one of the pieces of advice that I give to a lot of young people is, you don't even know where the world is going to be 10 years from now. You have no idea that the skill you're learning today or a degree you're getting today is going to have any relevance 10 years from now, because that is how fast our world is changing in terms of what's needed. Don't worry about what you're going to do forever. Worry about, number one, getting out of your parents' house so that there's a degree of personal responsibility. That it's not a matter that your parents can't retire because you are still living at home trying, waiting for your purpose to land in your lap. Take personal responsibility. And it may be something as boring as waiting tables. And that's fine. Because your purpose will land in your lap even if you're waiting tables. It's not that you have to sit at home and wait for it to happen. Get out of the house, do something, start somewhere, put one foot in front of the other, but do so with an open mind, with the awareness that I'm walking down this path right now, fully open to the fact that this path may show me an open door here and I'm going to walk through it. And I'm going to realize that my life is about learning, expanding, and giving and serving. And some of that's going to bring home income, some of it's not. And that's okay. But it doesn't all have to come together in one career. There's going to be aspects of my life that fulfill me deeply. They may not be what I get paid to do. And that's okay. So give them some encouragement to just start somewhere. Just start putting one foot in front of the other. There's no pressure that they've got to do it for the next 40 years. Let them stay open. Let them stay courageous. Let them keep learning from life. Keep exploring things. Stay open. But they need to start putting one foot in front of the other. That it's not a matter of just wait until it lands in your lap. And they may need some help in terms of structuring deadlines and parameters, because the dilemma these days with the online world is they go online to research one thing they're interested in. 6 weeks later, they emerge with, 100 new things that they found when they went to just look at one thing. And I think they do need a little bit of guidance from us. Not to suffocate them, not to thwart them, not in any way to discourage them, to give them the full flexibility, but to help them say, okay, by Friday, you're going to choose one thing. I don't care which one it is. By Friday, one thing. And you're going to start it. And if after you've started it and you've done it for a minimum of, say, 6 months, 1 year, whatever it may be, should something else open and you want to walk in that way, no problem. I will support you. But by Friday, you're going to choose one thing and you're going to start. And you may not say Friday, you may say 3 months from now. You may say January 1st of next year. Choose your deadline. It should depend, obviously, on how old they are, how long they've been in this phase. You know, if they just graduated university, give them some time. But if they've been sitting at home for 3 years, waiting for their purpose to fall in their lap, give them, you know, a shorter deadline. And just a little bit of kind of a gentle push off the diving board into the swimming pool, because you know they can swim. And even though they can't figure out which dive to do off the board, you know they're going to figure it out the moment they're off the board. And just a little bit of a gentle, here you are into the universeness. And they'll pick it up from there. It's just really easy these days to get paralyzed in far too many options, far too many possibilities. I mean, it's literally an infinite situation. You know I have a much milder case of it, but I think it's a similar experience where here at the ashram, nobody ever asks, what do you want to eat for food? In 26 years I've lived here, I can't think of one time that the cook has said to me, like, what would you like for dinner? I mean, he just cooks and then you eat. If I'm eating out, which I almost never ever do, but if I'm traveling and I'm at some conference or summit or something, as a very, very strict vegan when I'm traveling, I usually only have one or most maybe two options on a menu, so it's very easy to choose what I want because there's only one or two options. When I'm back in LA, where my parents live, there's a restaurant that's the only place I'll go to there, and it's my favorite place. It's this place a few blocks from my parents' house that is 100% organic and 100% vegan. But the problem is every single time I go there, I have this almost mild panic attack every time I pick up the menu because it's 70 different things I could eat. And for the life of me, I can never figure out what I want to eat. So I literally end up eating the same thing every single time I go there. Because the idea of I'm going to try to figure out what it's going to be like with this one or that one, it's just so much easier to choose one thing. But I know that feeling that the kids have when I walk into that restaurant and I pick up a menu with 70 options. Because you think, my God, I have no idea. I mean, this could be good, that could be good, but if I eat this, then I can't eat that. And they're dealing with this for their whole lives. I've only got to choose dinner. So we need to have a little bit of compassion for that also, but also be the metaphoric waiter who essentially says, you've got 30 seconds and I'm walking over to the next table. Like, decide right now or you're eating what I bring you. And just help catalyze that for them. Wonderful. Yes.
राधे राधे हिंदी
Sure, Hindi's fine. I'll translate it for those of you who don't speak Hindi.
ऑल राइट जैसे मेरे घर में बहुत ज़्यादा पूजा पाठ होता है तो हमें ये सिखाया गया कि अगर आप अच्छे कर्म करेंगे तो आपको मुक्ति या फिर मोक्ष मिलेगा मृत्यु के बाद में. सो क्या ये पॉसिबल है कि हमें जन्म जीते जी मोक्ष मिले? और ये मेरा फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन है. और सेकंड ये था कि सेल्फ रियलाइजेशन के लिए क्या त्याग करना ज़रूरी है?
बहुत बढ़िया. So he's asked, number one, is it actually possible to attain moksha? Complete freedom, liberation, while living in this body? And in order to attain moksha, do we need to do really intense sadhana and what's called tyag, penance, deep, deep tapas, austerities. Is this really necessary? Yes and no. Yes, it is possible to attain moksha while living. Do we have to do intense austerities? No. But we need intense wisdom and intense surrender. All of the puja path that we do, the ceremonies, the rituals, it's not ki from this ritual I will attain moksha. It's from this ritual my mind will stop running in the direction of greed, of jealousy, of lust, of judgment, of negativity, of grudges, of anger. And when I am free of all of that, then I realize who I am. And when I realize who I am, then I attain moksha. So you don't necessarily need the puja or the austerities, but you need some way of freeing yourself from the mind. Puja is a very powerful way. Mantra jap is a very powerful way. Seva, in a fully surrendered, not like 2 hours, once a month type of thing, but a lifetime of seva is a very powerful way. Meditation is a very powerful way. There's a lot of powerful ways, but the only way to attain moksha is to get freedom from the mind. And you can't use the mind to do it. That's the dilemma. You cannot think yourself to moksha. You have to free yourself from the games of the mind so you can actually experience who you are. So whichever path you choose, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, doesn't matter. But follow it fully and completely. And then you'll experience it. What you'll find, by the way, is that whichever yoga you start in, whichever path you start in, inevitably the others come along with it. Tyag happens automatically when we dive into truth. Tyag is not something that has to be forced. These austerities, it starts to happen automatically. When you realize your oneness with the divine, through bhakti, through jnana, automatically your attachment to the little things of the world, it disappears. So it's not ki I am engaging in tyag because I've got to do it and it's really, really, really difficult sadhana. It starts to happen automatically then. But that path of surrender is what's critical. Beautiful. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. A beautiful morning and day to our family joining us from all over the world. And so much love to all of you.